Hello, my name is Jack Stanley, and I'm the co-founder of the Tech Academy. I'd like to welcome you to the Tech Academy podcast. The Tech Academy operates a 15-week software developer bootcamp. Our program can be taken online from anywhere in the world. You can find out more at our website, learncodinganywhere.com. That's learncodinganywhere.com.
Our guest on the podcast today is Gustav. Gustav is a radio show host and a longtime Portland area personality, and our local listeners may recognize him. Join me today as we talk with Gustav about his technology background, how technology and software apply to the media arts and radio industry, and his early experiments with technology as a young man.
Yeah.
So I want to jump onto the Cupertino thing right away.
Okay.
You grew up down there, and you
I
have
did.
friends down there. All it is for me is like Valhalla. It's like this mystical place. And I know it's probably just like strip malls and buildings is just a place.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up down there?
So I grew up down there in the early 70s all the way up through the late 80s when I came up here to go to college. So I was really there for sort of the entire startup mentality that was happening down there. And it was you could tell there was something exciting going on because, you'd go out to like a cafe in, downtown Palo Alto on University Avenue or whatever. And it might be, the mid to late 80s. And you'd see people sort of gesturing excitedly with their hands and talking about, this, that, and the other, and ROI, and, all this other kind of stuff, like terms that, me as a teenager, I wouldn't understand.
Yeah, but there was something going on.
Oh, absolutely there was. And then, you had, businesses like Google, for example, their first startup was just right there in a tiny little spot, downtown Palo Alto. And it was kind of really sort of under the radar at the time. And actually, one of my first jobs out of college, summer of '92, was working for Intuit, which at the time was just a total startup down there. It was just, right there, just outside of Palo Alto, sort of between Palo Alto and Mountain View. And I was doing a little bit of tech support for their Quicken program on the Mac. And it was it was real remedial, like basic stuff. It's like I didn't know a whole lot about that stuff at the time, but I was like 20, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll just, see what happens here. And they wanted to hire me on. And I said, well, I'm not really interested in doing that because I want to head back up to Portland and, I want to do something different with my life. I don't want to work for a tax accounting software company. But I remember at the time, just being down there, you asked sort of what it was like, what the feeling was. The easiest way of saying it was just a sense of excitement because you knew that something was going on. You knew that you had all these sort of creative minds putting their heads together. And, there were companies that were popping up here and there, and somebody had the latest and greatest of this, and someone else was working on something really exciting, but they couldn't tell you about it unless they'd had maybe 3 or 4 drinks, and then they'd start dropping hints.
The NDAs fall off the line.
Yeah, exactly. The NDAs go away.
Whiskey
when you're out doing karaoke with a few people, you loosen up a little bit. But it was very exciting at the time. And, my mom still lives down there, so I go down and visit, a couple times a year. And it's changed a lot. You mentioned there's there's strip malls and all that kind of stuff as well, which, it's a suburb of San Francisco. So it's kind of like any other real sort of small town, except you'll notice a lot more self-driving cars. In fact, they have like these native, and I don't even know what to call them, but they look like these little sort of Jetsons mobiles. They're these really oddly shaped bubble kind of looking cars, and I've never seen them anywhere else other than Palo Alto.
What?
They're just these little self-driving. I think they're affiliated with Google or something like that, but they drive around and they're kind of like taxis, and you can just sort of get into one and go and get out somewhere else. And I've seen,
that's my Disneyland. I want to go there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you walk around, even on like the side streets and stuff, and sometimes you'll get lucky, like you'll see like one, like a Lexus with a whole bunch of cameras on top of it. And you're like, okay. Yes. I wonder what's going on there.
Man.
It's interesting because, people will take their devices out with them, and because you have to field test this stuff.
Oh yeah, as Apple learned with that iPhone,
with that phone that was left in the bar. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. That was in Mountain View, which is just that's just right next to where I grew up.
Okay.
Steve Jobs' widow actually lives a couple blocks away from the house that I grew up in.
Holy
so
boy.
She's still there on Waverly. So it was an interesting and exciting time to be down there. Of course, me growing up, it's like I had sort of a tech lean just because, I was Palo Alto. I grew up there. So I was using a computer really early on. And to me, it was just sort of second nature. And it was just like, well, this is just, what you do. And people work on this, that, and the other. And, there's the creative mindset. And it was very fun. It was very energizing. And it's, and it's still that way. It's very exciting, very fast paced.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
The creative imagination that you're describing really, really gets me going. I love stuff like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a tremendous amount of competition among people, of course. I mean, and it's it can be stressful. I have no doubt. I mean, I remember just even working for Intuit, for example. I mean, I was putting in like 60, 65 hour weeks, and I'm sitting and I'm like, I'm just out of college. I'm like, I want to have more fun. I want more free time. It's like, is this really what it's about? But it's the sort of like work hard, play hard mentality, which I discovered pretty quickly in the overall sort of culture that was going on down there.
Okay.
So
that's neat.
Yeah.
I like a little bit of insight into that because we grew up not far away. I grew up in Northern California, about 3.5 hours north of where you are.
Okay.
Right. And I'm actually really, like you described about, this is just what people do here. It's in the environment. I'm glad that didn't happen for me because all it was logging and fishing.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, I just gravitate towards these computers. And,
yeah. Well, you become a product of your environment. It's like, had I grown up somewhere more in like, northern or central California, I mean, I might have been more into like, hiking or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead I was, using an Apple II in the early 80s. So, there you go.
Very cool.
That was it.
You ever use one of the Lisas or the Macintoshes?
No, I never actually got my hands on a Lisa. I wish. That would have been really cool.
I have no idea how my tiny little high school funded it, but we had one.
Actually, and another machine that I was always really fascinated by was the Next boxes.
Never even seen one.
So I've seen them. Actually, a friend of mine down there he owns 2 of them.
Okay.
Just because, why have one when you can have 2? And they're really interesting in the sense that how they were designed to be exact sort of specifications as to their size.
Really?
It was, that's how Steve wanted it. He wanted these computers to look a certain way on the outside because he's very
everything else has to conform to that.
Exactly. So you had to redesign a motherboard. You had to redesign, how everything was soldered in there, and of course the machine itself ended up being incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And as far as like and he wanted it to be an educational platform, which schools can't afford something that's $10,000 a pop or whatever. So
they need a commodity.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I've never actually worked on a Lisa, but I remember one of the early machines that I worked on, it would have been like a Hewlett-Packard machine or some gigantic ungodly device with like the green CRT screen and stuff like that. This would have been back in the late 70s when I first started getting onto computers. It was, it was before the real sort of age, quote unquote, if you will, of personal computing. These machines were much more just math driven and stuff like that.
So I'm genuinely curious. Why didn't you go into technology? I mean, you're fantastic. I don't want you to go anywhere else besides radio.
It's funny. I've always sort of had that interest in it, and and I did it for a while, just sort of as a side sort of thing. I said with Intuit and everything that I was doing. But what I discovered was that, for one thing, when I got to college, I didn't go to college for radio at all. Okay. I never took a single class in it, actually. I have 2 majors that I'm not using for anything. I have a bachelor's in international affairs and a bachelor's in German. So, it's like, I'm fluent in a language that I don't use very often. And I can tell you about strategic arms reduction talks of 1972. But,
Salt.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Salt. Yeah, totally. But what I discovered actually when I first got into radio in college is that there's a tremendous amount of technology that gets used in broadcast media. Like, for example, like what we're doing right now, we have the microphones and we have, the XLR cables and everything like that. So it's like you have to, especially nowadays, if you work in just about any aspect of the media, you need to know tech stuff, which is interesting because, going into the job, I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah. It's like, okay. But now, day to day, I use, I have a MacBook Pro laptop, and I use that as a digital audio editor every day. I pre-produce segments to air. I do the mix show that runs on Saturday nights. I do text-based website updating. We do social media. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of technical knowledge that goes into the job. which
okay.
which
I hadn't thought
a
of
couple
that.
decades ago,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have even occurred to
Yeah.
me. It's like, oh, radio. You push a button and you talk into a microphone, and music plays or whatever. But there's a tremendous amount of behind the scenes things that go on.
Yeah.
So when you ask me about technology as a field, it's definitely something that interests me. Were I to segue into something different tomorrow, which I don't plan on doing, and I kind of hope that doesn't happen. But were something like that to happen, that's probably one of the first industries that I would take a good, long, hard look at.
Yeah.
Just because obviously it's a growing industry. There's a need for technical people, for software developers, for engineers, for any number of jobs in the field.
Yeah.
So it's, and technology is ever evolving. So
I couldn't agree with you more, and I realized I kind of violated even one of the core things that we talk about here at the school, which is that technology impacts every sort of job. And while we are trying to make software developers, we're really trying to make well-rounded technology workers. Because I had radio experience when I was in high school, just hanging out there and just like being fascinated, and then making friends with the DJs and having shown me how all that works, and it was a very manual process. But of course that industry would move along, and of course you're using all of that technology to do your job, because why wouldn't it come along with everything else? So you are a technology worker in that respect.
Yeah, exactly.
With a really good voice, but you're a technology worker.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I like to look at it that way too, because I take pride in the idea of knowing how to get certain. As you know, there's like a workflow to everything. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you're doing some sort of coding, it's like and I don't know a tremendous amount about coding, but I do know that if there's a certain process, and once you get the process down, okay, that it takes this amount to get this step done before you move on to something else. So it's like if you have that as a fluid process, you can easily move on to something else. A lot of the same is true in my job. Like I will, if I'm editing back digital audio on a phone call, it just becomes second nature after a while on, using the scrub wheel and the editing and copy paste and all that kind of stuff. Whereas were I to start doing this, numerous years ago, it would take a lot longer. I mean, it's just a learned sort of behavior. It's like you have these sort of built-in, it's like a built-in workflow, basically, is what goes on. And I think that's a lot of aspects of the job. Really.
Okay. Did you find any kind of a generational thing where the people who were, 5, 10, 15 years ahead of you didn't move into that technology arena very easily?
You know what? Yeah, I have seen that. And I don't know necessarily it might be a generational thing. I mean, I have seen that, and it's really, I can't stress more that it's important that people know how to use the tools for your job. I mean, it's like I remember when, social media was first starting to pop up, and it's like we have, at Intercom, we actually have a dedicated team just for social media. And it's like when they created that, I was like, okay, something's really going on here. This thing is
sticking.
We need to really jump on this, and we really need to be aware as to what's going on. And it was just one more aspect of the job. Now, if there's someone who's like an older generation who's saying, I don't know what this is.
What are these tweets?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see any birds.
Exactly. There's like a bird logo. Instagram. I don't know
exactly.
But you know what I mean.
Insta tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that face Google thing is.
I'm gonna use the Yahoo. But it's like seriously, like what you said. It could be a generational thing. I mean, there's my mom, bless her heart, down in Palo Alto. In the middle of Silicon Valley, and I remember when she got her first sort of real computer, and I'm setting everything up for her, and she just couldn't necessarily figure out, how to use the mouse. Like, how am I using this? And then, she for the longest time, she was checking email just on a web-based thing,
Yes.
And I'm like, look, there's a built-in mail program. All I need is certain settings, and you can check it in this mail program and not have to deal with a web-based, because it's my personal preference. I hate web-based email.
Right.
There's something about it. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
So
you like a client.
Yeah, exactly. I like
client.
a dedicated client.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went in and I showed her how to use that, and now she's fine with it. But it's the kind of thing where she could have sat there and said, well, I've been using this for X amount of years. I'm not going to change, regardless of the fact that it might be easier and, sort of less obtrusive.
Well, it's it's easier for people that understand all those fundamentals and can shift
Yeah.
really easily.
Yeah.
And you and I were very similar ages, had very similar upbringing. This is just part of our lives. One of the chief barriers we found in creating the school
Sure.
is that when I was the first person to put together the curriculum, and thank God I brought on a partner who was not a technology person. We talked about this briefly before.
Yeah, because they're able to sort of, I would assume they're able to sort of better explain in layman's terms to other people about what it's about.
Yes, and there's another facet, which is that when they aren't able to explain it, when they go through the curriculum, like Jack, right, my partner, when he's going through the curriculum and he reads over a certain thing and he can't break it down into fundamental parts himself and explain it in a basic way, that means I screwed up.
Right.
That means my job as a curriculum developer, I failed at it.
Okay.
And so it was a constant effort to continually break down every single concept or definition into the absolute fundamentals of a thing. For example, whenever we use any term related to the web,
Sure.
there's a huge body of knowledge already implied or assumed on the part of the receiver.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows that the internet is a connected series of computers
Yeah.
and protocols for how data is going to transfer on them. They think the internet is the web.
Right.
Not everybody knows that the web is a collection of electronic documents that is linked all around the world, and it happens to sit on machines that are part of the internet. Those two separate things. They don't know that.
Right.
So when you say, well, it's on the web, or use a web-based access,
Yeah.
it's on my computer and
Yeah.
I'm using it.
You
I don't
might as
know
well
where
start
it's
dropping
coming from.
terms like MySQL and
Oh,
stuff like that. It's like
man.
people won't necessarily grasp it. But
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
but that's the magic behind it, though. That's that's what I like to think is sort of like the great motivator. Like if you can take your average person and say, hey, that's great that you're using that in this way, but here, like, try this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what hooks people. I mean,
Yeah.
and the whole sort of try this mentality, if I hadn't adopted that mentality early on, I would still be mired in, doing things the old way, but
Yeah.
it's like I'm constantly trying to, because, time is always there. Like time is always going to be the motivator for every human being, and
Yeah.
it's like, do I have time for this?
Yeah.
I have to quickly do this before I go get my coffee and, pick up my son from daycare or whatever, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's like people are constantly looking for ways to streamline and you just have like a better grasp on day-to-day activities. So
Yeah.
it's like if you do that, you save time, you feel more motivated, you feel like you're accomplishing something.
Absolutely.
That's like a big part of, what I do. It's like if Daria and I, for example, if we have 30 minutes worth of unedited audio and I have to get this thing ready to air at 3:00 and I go in and I'm able to put it into cohesive segments and get music in place and stuff like that. If I'm able to do that quicker than I was, say, a couple months ago because I've discovered something, I'm going to feel much better about what I'm doing in my job.
Absolutely.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah. Well, I've seen people who want to create technology or a software program or an app to invent a solution to a problem that isn't really there. And every single real effective piece of software or technology I've ever seen was because someone was already doing something, but they didn't like the way it was done. It was inefficient. It cost
Sure.
too much money. It was just a pain in the butt to do.
Right.
So, okay, fine. Then you bring technology in. But these things are just like try to create a thing organically without even seeing that there's a problem or an issue or something to be resolved. It's rather interesting.
And that would be a big challenge. Like you said, a lot of things are just sort of improvements on existing devices. I mean, like the iPod is a really great example.
Yeah.
I mean, we all remember, I had an MP3 device
Oh,
before
yeah.
the iPod.
Yeah.
It could hold maybe, 256 megs worth
And
of
how'd you
data.
like the interface? How easy was it to
Oh
use?
my God, it was terrible.
Oh, man. And then you get this iPod and you're like, I'm spinning
And
my
it's a
finger.
click wheel. Yeah, it was
Boom.
amazing. It was like the coolest thing ever. So it was like, just an example of taking something where it's like, okay, the idea is there, but how can we make this better? How can we improve the UX, the user experience overall?
Yeah,
that's
love that.
really all there was to it.
Yeah. And I think any endeavor you get into, you've got to have that continual create. And the part of the creation is more efficient, better help. Like if you're creating a thing, it's there to help people.
Yeah.
It's there to help people.
Yeah.
Like why else are you doing it? Yes, you want to make a living.
Right.
But if you're not motivated by help, what are you motivated by? Money? That's a really
Unless you're trying to come up with something out of thin air and you're looking for investor money or
Yes.
something like that.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, that thing, it's going to help the investors.
Right.
It better help the end user in some way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, the school is all about help, so it's a
and
thing I look at a lot.
I get that, which is really neat.
Yeah,
That's
very
really
cool. Awesome. So you went to college up here?
I did. I went to Lewis and Clark College. I graduated from there in 1992.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
They're kind of picky, aren't they?
They are. It's funny. When I was applying to schools, I noticed the application was sitting on my desk, and it was one of the last ones that I filled out. And I was like, oh wait, this is due in like a week. I better do this. So I kind of filled it out as an afterthought and sent it in. And I was interested in the school because of their international program, and they send a lot of students abroad. They were one of the first schools to actually have Russian exchange students, which at the time they were
in the early 90s?
In 89.
Yeah, because you would have been applying before the...
Yeah, they were from Khabarovsk.
The wall had fallen year.
No, yeah, they were genuine Soviet students.
Wow.
That came over. And
did they try to buy your blue jeans off you?
Yeah, no, exactly, right? It was the most amazing thing, because I remember they got to the school and everyone's kind of staring at them in the cafeteria,
yeah.
like, they were dressed differently and they didn't...
The Red Menace section's over there.
Yeah, exactly. It's behind the Iron Curtain. But like they spoke, very little English. But it was amazing because it was a chance to establish a communication with someone that you were sort of genuinely interested in talking about. It's like, I was like, wow, these are like, because no one had ever talked with anyone from the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah,
in the late 80s. So I mean, forget it.
That's neat.
Yeah, so it was really cool. So Lewis and Clark is a fantastic school. In fact, my my 25-year reunion is this weekend. And I'm like, oh yeah. So I'll head back over to campus and hang out with people and stuff like that, which will be fun.
Cool.
But yeah, it was an amazing experience, and I took a tremendous amount away from it, including, the beginnings of radio and the embracing of communication with people and collaboration and, embracing of technology, and really a lot of good tools for moving beyond college and into real life, as it were, I guess.
That's actually really good. I'm glad to hear that. We interact a lot with traditional academia as we have the school moving forward. And I didn't come up through that. You may recall I went to the Navy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I got a great education, but it's a whole different modality. And as we bump into that academic world, it's been difficult to really grasp how they view things, because everything I've done in terms of education, how the school's organized, is so pragmatic.
Right,
it's just, okay, here's the basic theory underlying something, but here's how to actually do it.
Yeah.
And here's the next time you encounter something, how to know this is the right tool that applies to that thing. And that we just have to do that, because we have to deliver a product that can go out and they can get a job.
Sure.
And they can hit the ground running and be of immediate value. But we're working on a partnership with a university, and so the more we find out about their point of view, they care just as much about the student outcomes. They really do.
Right.
They really care about them. But the thing you just talked about, like preparing you for life afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
They have great difficulty in general, and I'm very new to this, in working that out, particularly in computer science. So to hear that that's actually something you got out of it, I love that. That's great.
I did. I definitely got that because there's, when you're in college, depending on what you do, there's a lot of interpersonal, communication that happens. And that's that's a tool that you can use, when you're collaborating in the workplace or, whatever the case may be. But it's like you said, how you bring in people from actual, companies and people that come in to talk to the students.
Yeah.
That's also, that's a really great thing, because it facilitates the idea that, hey, this is what it's like beyond here. This is like, these people are going to tell you some things that you may not necessarily know about.
Yeah.
And it's like you have all the tools that you need to get a job beyond this, but here's what you may not know about.
Yeah, it's exactly why we do that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am curious, did you go overseas while you're in college?
I did. Yeah, I went to Munich, Germany, and I studied there for a year. And it was my junior year at Lewis and Clark. And the interesting thing was, when I went over there, the wall had just come down like some months earlier, and I was there for the beginning and the end of the first Gulf War.
Oh, wow.
Which was an interesting time to be there. There were a lot of sort of anti-American protests and stuff like that. And it was an amazing experience. I actually, by the time I left, I had a job working for Becker, which made the car stereos that go into Mercedes and BMWs.
Oh, wow.
So the BMW factory is in Munich, the main factory.
Okay.
And so this car stereo company would make these radios that would then go into the BMWs that were rolling off the factory line. So my job was I was basically quality assurance.
Okay.
So I had to check all the functions of the radios and make sure that they were working fine, which meant basically I got paid money to listen to music all day, which which is seriously fantastic. It's like
what do you do for a living?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was the funniest thing because it's like I went in. I remember I was looking for a job, and I went into the, oh my gosh, what's the English word? The Arbeitsamt, the job office, as it were. And so I went in there, and there was this old woman with this giant Rolodex, and she was going through, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want that? I was like, wow, I don't know. This is pretty cool. This country has it figured out. You want a job? Walk in. Oh, hey, here's a job. That kind of thing.
Love it.
It was amazing.
That's cool.
And so, she came across working for Becker Car Stereo, and I was like, well, okay, yeah, sure, fine. And within a few weeks that I was working there, my boss came up to me and said, look, clearly you know what you're doing. You're fluent in German and English, and it would be really great if we could sort of move you up in a certain level in this job and have you as sort of like a marketing liaison between Munich and our United States office. And I was a college student. I had I was like, what? I was like, this is supposed to be like a part-time thing.
Right.
I'm just here studying. It's like, I don't really know, so I mean, I ended up not taking it, of course, but and I remember like the United States office was somewhere in New Jersey, or something. So it would involve like flying back and forth between Munich and New Jersey, like, a few times a month, and staying in, little corporate apartments or whatever. And I was like,
that's exactly the life you had envisioned for yourself.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Yeah,
how can you say no to that?
So it was like Intuit, where I was like, I don't know. But it was interesting at the time because it was, it was a cool place to work, and I also liked seeing what all the hardware engineers were doing, because if there was an issue with one of the radios, they would put it up on their bench, and they'd work on it, and they'd have all the tools to work on these things.
See the oscilloscopes to show the signals.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, just like racks and racks of that stuff.
Oh, love
just
that
to
stuff.
test all that stuff.
And you got to encounter a completely different environment and culture.
Yeah, studying abroad was one of the coolest things about the whole college experience.
Yeah.
Was getting overseas and meeting different people and seeing different attitudes, and as I feel as though we as Americans, a tremendous amount of people are sort of get locked into their own little world. Like you're in this bubble. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna go out to Applebee's on the weekend and hit 7-Eleven. I'm gonna drive my Cadillac Escalade, and I'm not really gonna care like what's going on in the rest of the world. Whereas something like this, it really opens up your eyes as to everything that's going on. It's when you meet someone in an outside environment and they sort of tell you their opinions as to what's going on in the world and also your country, it really gives you pause. You kind of look at it from a completely different perspective, which is something which I think a lot of people could really, really benefit from.
I've always felt that way. I grew up in the middle of the woods in Northern California. I wasn't, other than books, and I read a lot of books. I wasn't exposed to anything like that. And I get in the Navy, and I found the good and the bad that's out there.
Sure.
I remember the first time I'm in the Navy, and I actually hear someone use a racial epithet.
Oh.
Like they actually said it. I know there are people that are going to listen to this and go, yeah, that happens. You grew up in the middle of the woods surrounded by hippies. You don't hear those kind of words.
Yeah.
And I just remember turning and looking. He actually meant that. And my world shifted a little bit. Yeah. So you see that kind of stuff. But then, like, go to Saudi Arabia years later when I'm in the Navy. And the thing you're talking about, go to my Applebee's and everything. Yeah. We land, and a bunch of sailors walking around, and we get into the town. It was Jeddah, Saudi Arabia,
okay,
right?
All right?
And people see the Pizza Hut and lose their minds. Like, I'm gonna Pizza Hut, and there's a Burger King next to him. Like,
right?
What is wrong with you people? And so a couple of my buddies and I were like, no, we're going here. And we find a little alley, and we just we're gonna walk down the alley.
Yeah,
we're indestructible.
Yeah,
and you find some little teeny restaurant. The guy speaks absolutely zero English. We speak absolutely zero Arabic. Somehow we communicated chicken, and so we get this chicken soup that was 90% onions, and and the guy is just all smiles and all nice.
And that's the best experience too, is to get off the beaten path. And because I remember when I was in Germany and I wanted to travel around to other places, like when I went to the Czech Republic, I went to the former East Germany, which had just opened up. I was like, I can go to East Germany now. I'm totally going to East Germany. And I remember other students saying I'd meet other students in youth hostels, and they'd say, well, you should go here, you should go there. It'll be a really easy time because everyone there speaks English. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's not that's not what I'm looking for.
No.
You know, it's like I don't want an easy time. I want to go somewhere and I want to have to struggle. I want to have to figure things out. I want to be able to, you know, walk up to someone and say, and start off with, you know, do you speak English? No. Okay. Do you speak German? No. Okay. Let me figure this out. Let me work this problem. I know a little bit of Russian. Do you speak Russian? You know, no. Okay, well, let's, you know, so then, you know,
any
you
of the
start,
Romance languages, please.
yeah. So then you start like gesturing at different maps and trying to
Yes.
figure out, but it's great because, once you break down that barrier with someone, we're all kind of alike. You know, everyone is kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this person's just looking for a cool place to go and have a drink.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out.
Yeah. Oh, that's
You know?
neat.
Yeah.
What a cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, that's our time for this. I really appreciate
Okay.
you sitting down.
Yeah.
I do want to give you an opportunity at the end of this. Is there anything you want to promote or talk about that you encourage our listeners to do or listen to?
Well, I do. I'm on the afternoon show on 94.7 FM. Daria and I do that each day from 2 to 7. We have a tremendous amount of fun. So if anybody wants to listen into that, we would love to have you as a listener.
Okay. I promised I wasn't going to fanboy out on anything.
Yes.
But I do have to on one point. What's it like having Daria back?
Oh my God, it's just fantastic. Daria and I have been great friends for over 20 years. We did mornings together from back in 2000 to 2003, and even after the demise of that show, we would still see each other every day in the halls because, you know, she was afternoons on the Buzz and I was on 94.7. But us being back together, it's like just a wonderful reunion, and we've been able to sort of segue back into what it was that we were doing years ago that we loved doing together, which is actually honestly like kind of like what we're doing. Daria and I just sit and we just kind of chat,
And it happens to be a
and it just
microphone,
happens to be exactly. It's like any sort of conversation you could have with someone else. That's
so neat to
really
have
just
with
kinda
someone,
what
isn't
we
it?
do. Yeah, and there's such a great rapport between the both of us because we have our different roles in what we do. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. She's a brilliant writer. Oh my gosh,
really?
brilliant writer. Everything that she writes is just fantastic.
That's
and
great.
I'm a huge fan of working with her because, you know, she's very smart and she's very funny. And
She is funny.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so it's awesome. I couldn't ask for a better gig, to be honest with you.
man.
It's really great. So it's just us hanging out, playing music, talking about whatever sort of strikes our fancy, and we'll give away concert tickets or take phone calls or that sort of thing.
Great.
So it's a lot of fun.
Well, from an audience member, it absolutely works. It's been such a pleasure to have that dynamic come back.
Thank you.
Because
Yeah.
I first started just really living here after being on the road for many years.
Sure.
In 2000. And
Okay,
that was my introduction to Portland
Sure.
radio. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, that's right. When we were doing mornings, absolutely.
Where did it go?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
It's sometimes people just kind of disappear, and
Yeah.
that's that.
Yep. And sometimes they deserve to. Bye, Tom Likas. Did I say that? I said that or not? Okay, good. Well, again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Hi, this is Jack Stanley again, co-founder of the Tech Academy. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I'd like to leave you with a suggestion. We call this Jack's Random Tips. Today's tip is, however obvious this might sound, it's best to treat your coworkers and superiors with courtesy and respect. This doesn't mean to allow others to walk all over you, but soft skills are valued by most employers. A beautifully completed project on your part can be ruined by a moment of bad manners. To illustrate this, I once observed a salesperson in a company sell a large contract. It was a big deal, and it really helped out the company. Right after that, the salesperson got in an argument with the boss. Now, what do you think the boss remembered more? The amazing sale or the firefight? Even if you're an excellent performing employee, if you're a jerk to others and hard to work with, they may not recognize your competence and skills. Again, that doesn't mean if someone is giving you a hard time that you can't defend yourself. By all means, stick up for yourself. I've been working for over 15 years, and most of that time I've spent in executive positions. So I'm speaking from experience as someone who's been a general employee and worked in management. I can tell you that a positive attitude and good manners is something looked for by employers. Right or wrong, in most companies, employees are judged on personality and attitude as much as they are judged on work performance. In the words of Emily Post, manners are a sensitive awareness of the feelings of others. If you have that awareness, you have good manners, no matter what fork you use. And again, If you are interested in enrolling in our Software Developer Bootcamp, please visit our website, learncodinganywhere.com. During our bootcamp, students learn several in-demand programming languages. By the end of the bootcamp, students are well-rounded, entry-level software developers. In addition to our thorough curriculum, one of the things that sets us apart is that our program is self-paced, and we offer open enrollment, which means students can start anytime. Whether you're looking for a career change, you're unemployed, or fresh out of high school, the Tech Academy is the perfect option for those interested in breaking into the technology industry. LearnCodingAnywhere.com.